Hey, Greg, good morning. I appreciate you joining me early this Saturday morning for a conversation in education. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks. Great to be here. We have done a couple of this before, and glad to sort of meet up here on Zoom. Would be great to meet in person one day.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do appreciate that. So let's tell us a little bit about who you are and what you represent, and then let's go into the conversation. How does that sound?
Sounds good. So maybe just let me just start by introducing myself first, and how maybe just to give you a bit of a background how we started RoundPier, and sort of I guess it's sort of really connected to my personal background. I come from a family of educators, two teachers. Both my parents taught in two different countries for about 35 years now. And I've been around the topic of education since I was a little kid. I was part of a number of social ventures in the past and social enterprises in the past, both in Europe and here in the US. My professional background started actually in finance. I started my career in New York City, working in a finance world for about a few years, and then moved to London. Spent almost 10 years in London, working again with large and then smaller groups, and then ended up working in Africa, investing a lot into the local businesses across different sectors. And that's where I sort of reconnected to the topic of education again. As a part of the investment group that I was in Africa, we had a very interesting education foundation and sort of entrepreneurship and education program that we rolled out across a number of regions in Zimbabwe, Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, and that's where really I sort of get back into sort of the idea of building something on the education side, and sort of during that time, sort of the basic question that we've seen from the local communities, also from schools, it was, what should our kids do outside of the classroom?
Hmm.
So, and that's where really sort of RoundPier, the platform I co-founded with Eric and Zita some time ago now, a few years ago almost. That's how we got started. It was really to answer that question: how do we create this platform for students and educators to really understand what should the kids do beyond the classroom?
So with that, are you focused on younger, middle grade, higher education, college education? Or do you have a particular focus, or is it kind of all encompassing?
Yeah, we're very focused at the moment on the 14 to 17 age group.
Okay,
We are not interested in the college space.
okay.
There's a lot of players in that in a sort of in that market. There are a lot of sort of both for-profit and non-profit
Mm.
organizations in that market. Where I find the most interesting sort of space at the moment is really this 14 to 17 age group. Is the pretty much middle and high school students.
Mm.
That's sort of, and I think these are the students that really are, I would say, in many cases disadvantaged when it comes to sort of opportunities outside of the classroom. And we'll talk about this later, I think, but to me, this is a real problem that we're trying to solve. And it's not just us. There's a number of other groups, for profits, non-profits, that are trying to tackle this issue of how to engage students beyond the classroom.
So when you talk about, going beyond the classroom, what did you find was the need, or, when we build businesses, we talk about the pain point of, we need to focus our energies here. We need to fix this particular situation or problem. What did you find was the issue here?
There's a couple of things. I think the first one is actually quite interesting because, and as we're focusing now on this 14 to 17 age group, that's just a small part of K-12 segment.
Hmm.
Um, it started from two things. Obviously, as I said, my experience in Africa has been where kind of, the students who are not in certain schools, whether you're in sort of in central London or New York City or San Francisco Bay Area, where you have a lot of resources outside of the classroom, where you have great counselors, you have a lot of extracurricular activities. Most of the schools don't have that, not just in the US or other developed countries, and their issue in developing countries is even worse. So that's number one problem. So this ability to engage students through extracurricular activities and kind of bringing those extracurricular activities to students, to schools, is something that where I see the first pain point. Personally, as a parent, I mean, and that's the age group where we will focus later. It's really sort of 7 to 13. As a parent, we as parents, we're struggling to find things for our kids on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So the extracurricular side is very, very important. And I also speak from my own experience as a kid. I mean, this is something that I learned a lot from doing things outside of traditional classroom. And I think as we move into the world that's more is more dominated by technology, having these activities outside of the traditional classroom are going to become more and more important. So
Are
this
there
is
any
the first pain point.
are there any activities that you really focus on? Or is it
So on RoundPier, there's a couple of things that we do. There's a we're the largest. So what do we want to become? We want to become the go-to platform for anything outside of classroom, basically, and that comes from sort of extracurricular activities, college and career resources. It's really sort of bringing a variety of opportunities to students and to educators, and to connect them with those opportunities. So we are already the largest, I would say, platform database of after school and summer programs, competitions, events for 14 to 17 age group. We've got, I think, about 2,500 different opportunities on the platform. Some of them actually generated by us, but most of them are third-party opportunities. We run a number of competitions during the year. It's entrepreneurship, nonprofit competition for high school students. We run a number of series of writing competitions, contests for that age group. We run screenwriting competition every year, partnering with the very, very famous Hollywood production company. We run an investment competition, partnering with a number of finance firms. And this is all for this age group of 14 to 17, which is really something that they don't get anywhere else. And that's the uniqueness of the platform. But those are just some of the areas we're focused on. We create a number of other opportunities for students through RoundPier magazine. We have an opportunity for students to basically write for our quarterly magazine. And there's just probably, I would say, 10, 15 events that we host every year for that age group. And then on top of that, there's a few thousand of other very interesting programs. And so it's a mix of our own content and our own events and competitions, combined with a number of third-party programs and events.
So, in your own opinion, how large is your organization, and how many students have you impacted so far?
Yeah, so we've reached about 70,000 members. So it's not huge. We're mostly focused on relatively motivated students at the moment, and that's been sort of the original idea.
Right.
So with 70,000 members, we're quite active in terms of these are very, very active members. They spend quite a lot of time with us on the platform. And that's sort of part of what we really try to build. I mean, when we started RoundPier, it was a very interesting social project, basically for all of us, for the founders. And as we grew it, we realized that this is a great sort of it should be a great organization as we scale it, and it should reach more and more people. We started with, I would say, about 1,000 students in the first half a year or so. And then sort of we never marketed the platform. Everything that we've done was done through word of mouth. Schools would come to us and tell us, we want our team to participate in your competition, and I would onboard their team. The teachers would come, counselors would come sometimes to ask questions. So then that's another part of RoundPier that we're building is really helping staff, counselors, guidance counselors, career counselors in schools to really bring students into bring these opportunities first, but then also set them on the right path as they complete their high school sort of experience.
Right. And one of the things that you had wanted to talk about was that focus from, I think, going into or getting that 14 to 17-year-old population ready for college. And so what kind of programs do you have set up and how do you get that going?
So there are a number of things that we're doing at the moment. I think, in my view, there's two things that, how I split the education system. There's anything that happens in the classroom.
Mhm.
And I think this is a very, very important part. And I think, what we've experienced in the last 18 months is very unfortunate that the kids could not attend in classroom lessons.
Right.
And to my mind, as someone who's looked at the teaching careers of a number of people, sort of, and of course, starting with my own family, and speaking with teachers on a daily basis, almost, they would tell you that they don't think they can teach online all the time. It's almost impossible, I think, to really have a successful teaching experience without having this offline, in-person presence.
Any particular reason for that? That could be easily a conversation for another time. And when I have conversations with other professionals,
Yeah.
I get the same inclination. So what have what have professionals communicated to you in terms of that problem?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is that you just don't get that connection with the student when you are online. You cannot see their progress. It's very,
Right.
very difficult to see their progress. Of course, you can give out the test and you can grade them, but you don't have that personal connection with the student. You don't see the look on his or her face when they try to sort of solve that math problem. They don't get to ask as many questions simply because there's just too many
Too
Zoom
many.
images
Yeah.
on your screen. But that's a technical issue, I would say. But then I think the more personal issue, which I see here quite often, is you need teachers and mentors. In the end of the day, they're influencers for students, and if they don't have a chance to develop that personal connection with one or two teachers during their middle or high school career, who can really influence them,
Mhm.
and they're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities, because a lot of this students, I mean, they rely on the teacher's advice. They rely on this counselor's advice. They're not all of them have parents who can guide them sort of and sort of explain what they need to do next. And if you start with in classroom learning, if you start with that's just sort of very, very simple, just a very simple classroom experience. If you don't build that connection with the students, it's very, very difficult to teach them as well.
So I think just based on our conversation and conversations I've had, and apparently you've had with other professionals, humanity is always going to be a part of education. We always need to have that human emotional connection with each other, and that's impactful. And we can't. I don't think we're ever going to get
Absolutely.
away from that.
Absolutely, we're not robots, right? And then something that I also picked up from a couple of teachers, which I find very, very interesting. Look, teaching is not the most glamorous career. It's not the most well-paid job, which, I mean, another topic for discussion, and I could
Absolutely.
spend a few hours on that easily. What my view on the pay structure in education should be,
Right.
but I think if you look at the reason why people go into the teaching career, they actually want to connect with students. They want to impact their lives, right? And if you don't give them that, if you don't give teachers that personal connection, if you don't give them that opportunity to see students and have that in-person experience with them, it will be difficult to attract a new generation of teachers, in my opinion.
That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what, if you could, what particular programs do you have set up that help students in the 14 to 17-year-old range make that transition into college or career
Yeah,
successful. Can
yeah,
you talk to any one of them programs?
sure. So, and as I said, so the way I see it, this, we have in classroom experience, and then we have after school experience. And sort of in my view, um, in after school experience has a huge impact on how you do in classroom as well. And there's actually a number of studies that confirm the fact that the students who participate in after school programs or activities, they will basically perform better in classroom. From on our side, what we're trying to focus on is number one, is extracurricular activities, clubs. We provide content for school clubs. We provide events and competitions for school clubs. If you look at the numbers, there's in an average public school in the US, you have anywhere between 10 to 15 sort of school clubs at least.
Mhm.
And as they sort of grow, as the schools grow, as the sort of kids, new students join, they try to create their own clubs. But in some schools it goes up to like 40, 45 different clubs. The issue for a lot of the clubs that have very little content, and with lack of funding, content becomes even more scarce. It's even harder to find content. It's even harder to bring the right teachers to oversee the clubs. And that's one part of what we're doing on RoundPier. It's not just one program. It's kind of a range of programs on RoundPier that we rolled out just sort of before the summer to help clubs create new projects, start new projects. We sort of provide different content, we provide different competitions for school clubs. And that goes sort of on a national basis, but also internationally. We see a lot of clubs coming in from Europe, but we see a number of clubs coming from India now, Southeast Asia in general. So, school club projects, competitions, that's a big part of RoundPier. Then as we move on further, as I said, organizing extracurricular activities for students is a big part of RoundPier's platform. But then on top of that, we're building college and career resources. And with that comes basically some very simple tools like college matching tools. A lot of students, during our time with RoundPier over the last 2 years that we've been fully active, we realized that a lot of students have the same questions over and over again. So what is it that I should do in college? What college is good for me? What activities should I do now to prepare me better for college, right? So they're just some of the most kind of, I would say these are the kind of the most frequently asked questions that we see on the platform. Because RoundPier is also a community, which is a great part of I think what we do also on top of being sort of a great resource center and platform, it's a community, right? So there are a number of discussion groups and there are a number of sort of little kind of boards that students use to get advice from other students, to get advice from some teachers, whether it's an IP class that they're preparing for, or it's sort of an activity they want to pursue. They can reach out to the community of 70, 80,000 people now and ask those questions. And there's some really good answers there too. And and we're also learning from them. In fact, we're also learning from students. We're also learning from educators. But when it comes to sort of when we see all those questions, we just identified a number of issues that are sort of most pressing. And then there's the ones that I described. I mean, what am I going to do next? This is the number one question. What should I do now to be successful later? Whether it's getting an after internship, getting a sort of into a summer program. What should I do now to get into the summer program for next year? What should I do now to focus on computer science major in college, right? How do I prepare for computer science major? Because that's the topic that's not very well covered in school. And so
I think guidance counselors don't have all the answers.
Exactly. And we're going to come back to the guidance counselors. These are the tools that we're actually building to help them.
Good.
And so the basic tool that we're just releasing is this college matching platform. A lot of students, we realize, they have a few names, a few college names in their mind because their friends went there, their family went there, they heard it on in the media, but they have no idea a lot of them have no idea what they want to study in college. They have no idea what programs are there. They don't have no idea what majors they can apply for.
Mhm.
That's why a lot of students go undecided, which is not ideal again, because you're going to spend a lot of money
A lot
and,
of money.
without figuring out, without, sort of really getting at the right degree for you. So the
Good for the
first tool
college,
that
not good for the student.
absolutely, and that's another topic for another few hours, I think,
Yeah, understood.
on the college admissions, and I have a very sort of particular
Well,
views on.
we could talk a lot about a lot of things for a long time. Can we focus on one of the other things that you had mentioned to me earlier? Democratizing access to resources. And so how does that really, what do you mean by that actually? And how do you put
Yeah,
that into practice?
very, very simple. I mean, as I said, I think, a lot of schools, they finally, with the help of a lot of for-profit and non-profit businesses, they've figured out the way how to tackle in classroom learning, right? So they
Mhm.
figured they've got resources now, they've got content, they got curriculums. Even if it's a underfunded school, they can have access to a number of great curriculums. There are not a lot of organizations that we're actually dealing on RoundPier with, that provide excellent, for example, AP classroom curriculums,
Mhm.
and it's free for schools. And even if you don't have the best sort of resources in your school, you can reach out to these organizations and get curriculum for your, I don't know, AP calculus course in your school. What schools are generally not good at and sort of cannot equally support students is really outside of the classroom.
Mhm.
Most of the schools either don't have the funding or don't have the resources, or simply don't have the experience of supporting students outside of the classroom. And that's not because they don't want to. It's because, again, it comes back to the funding. It comes back to sort of the expertise. Um, there's some amazing guidance counselors. I mean, we've actually met a lot of them through RoundPier, and we've spoken with, I would say, a few hundred of guidance counselors in schools. And but if you look at the statistics, on average in the U.S. public school, you have one counselor per 500 kids,
That's the truth.
and
And
on average, they have less than 10 minutes a year to spend with a student. So how much advice can you give in 10 minutes when you don't even know the student? So these are just some basic things that we have tried to figure out and try to sort of organize on the platform on how to help the guidance counselors first, how to help career counselors,
Mhm.
how to help other staff. And when it comes to what do we mean by democratizing access, right?
Mhm.
If you're in a school which has no counselors or no access to sort of any other advice, or have lack of extracurricular activities, lack of clubs, our goal is to basically make that happen for the students who are interested in certain extracurricular activity. They're interested in getting advice on their future, on their career, on their college options. So the tools we have and tools we're building as we go are the tools that basically will allow every student anywhere in the world, irrespective of who they are, where they come from, their parents' income, to get the same activities and the same resources as the student who is in a private school in New York City.
so you and your team and your company offer a tremendous value to not only students but to families as well. And so because as parents, we tend to wonder and are concerned if our son or daughter doesn't have that focus. And I know way back in the day that was me, and I really didn't have all the resources that you're talking about now. So what option did I choose? And I chose to go into the U.S. Marine Corps. And that's a different story altogether. And we have, we could talk a lot about a lot of different things. What I'm concerned about right now is for our audience, how do they get in touch with you, and how do they, get involved in or just, I want your service and I want to bring your service here. Um, we're going
Yeah,
to put some links, in the description, but can you talk about how people can get in touch with you?
absolutely. I mean, it's completely free. We don't charge schools. We're not in the business of charging teachers. or students or parents of families, it's a completely free resource for the users. Teachers typically come in, they sign up on the platform. They can invite their students. They can invite, for example, if you're a drama teacher and you want to participate in our script writing competition in the end of the year, you bring your team on the platform. So it's very easy. You can go to roundpier.com. You can sign up as an educator. You can sign up as a student. You can even sign up as a parent already, and manage your student's account and see what opportunities are there for your 13-year-old or even 12-year-old now, because as a parent you can do that. On the other hand, you have about we have a small community of teachers that also help each other out. So the teachers come and they also ask questions quite often. They also ask for advice. What can I do in this particular club? And we have a number of clubs that were brought to the platform by teachers. So if you're a teacher overseeing the club, it's a great opportunity for you to bring your club onto the platform, get some content, participate in our events. We just before the summer we had a social impact competition for school clubs. It was we had I think 40-50 different clubs from around the country.
So one last question, and then we'll go ahead and end the conversation. How large do you touch? Is this global? Is this really international, or are you focused on certain geographic areas?
Look, we have it's a very global platform, and we started actually. It was very interesting. We started in Europe, and was our first. We started in the UK. It was our first sort of entry point. We started talking to schools. We started talking to students there, and then we spent a few months in the US, and we quickly realized there's so much more interest in extracurricular activities here, and both from parents, students, and schools themselves. And we refocused a little bit more on the US in the last 18 months, and I would say there's about 70% of the platform is US based, and about 30% is international. And on the international side, we have, I would say, probably Europe and Southeast Asia are about 50%, and then the rest is just spread rather globally.
Okay. Well, Greg, I appreciate your time today, and you are so full of information, and it was just a great conversation to have. Any last words, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Any last words from you?
No, nothing. I think it's great to be part of this, and obviously you spend your whole time speaking to educators, speaking to different companies in the education space, and we always value feedback and comments and sort of ideas on how we can improve what we're doing. But the goal that we've set about 18 months ago when we formally launched in sort of in a number of regions in the US was we want to become the go-to after-school platform and community resource center for K-12 students. And if you come across ideas on how we can improve that platform, we would really appreciate that.
Okay.